Everybody, welcome back to Leosophy. Got 3 more questions, and I'll just jump right in. Let me draw it up. There we go. How does fermentation work? Well, fermentation is what happens when bacteria, or actually more accurately, monocellular organisms, because I'll get to that in a minute, when they alter the chemistry of a substance in such a way that it is beneficial for human beings. That's my own definition. That may not be what Merriam-Webster or whatever has to say on the matter. And some notable examples of this would be, and it especially involves the conversion of sugar, and that's because sugar happens to be loved by most bacteria, including the ones that are bad for us. And so if you can alter sugar and turn it into a compound that's toxic for most bacteria, but acceptable for the human body, what you've done is you've extended the shelf life of that material. You've made it last longer because now it's not going to be invaded by pathogen bacteria, and instead can be made proper use of by human beings. Additionally, because some of the bacteria that colonize and ferment things are often beneficial for human beings in our guts, lactobacillus being one of the big ones, it also provides probiotics, because the bacteria have not only made that substance inhospitable for pathogens, but because they're literally living in that substance now, when you consume it, instead of killing them, you just incorporate them into your gut bacteria. It adds to the diversity of your own internal biome, so that's cool. But one example, the reason why I corrected myself earlier, I started to say bacteria and then I said monocellular organisms, is because the number one fermenter is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. That's one of the most famous ones. When people think of fermentation, they usually think of like beer and wine and stuff. Well, that's a fungus. It's not a bacteria, but it's monocellular. But it usually involves the conversion of sugar. So case in point, yogurt. That would be the fermentation of dairy, of milk, by lactobacillus for the most part. There's other bacteria that colonize it too, but that's the big one. And then what it does is it converts lactose, the sugar found in dairy, into lactic acid. So see how that works? Well, with Saccharomyces cerevisiae, that's when the yeast it converts sugars into a couple of waste products, most notably carbon dioxide, which is why a lot of fermented things are bubbly, and the more important one, ethanol. So in both of those cases, you can see 2 compounds being produced from sugar, which bacteria normally like, into ethanol and lactic acid, neither of which bacteria, pathogens specifically, are too fond of. So that's good for us. It extends the shelf life of that material. Yogurt lasts a lot longer than milk, and it's also got different nutrient ratios that can be good for us. Similarly, beer has different nutrient ratios than, say, just boiled barley. In addition to that, just the water included, and additionally, the ethanol in it's going to make it last longer. Let's see, what else? What's another good example of fermentation? Oh, in addition, another form of lactic fermentation would be sauerkraut and lactic pickles, in which case, let's see, lactic acid is being produced from carbohydrates in those instances. The carbohydrates and a few simple sugars in cucumbers, cabbage, etc., is being broken down and converted into lactic acid. Let's see, there's another. I knew there was a third that I wasn't thinking of. That would be acetic fermentation. These are the big 3 when people think of fermentation. Acetic fermentation is when acetobacter converts sugars into acetic acid, which is just a fancy word for vinegar. Great examples of this would be your standard pickles. In those instances, carbohydrates and some simple sugars in those pickles are being converted into acetic acid. Acetic acid is very, very antimicrobial for the most part. It's really good at repelling pathogens. That's why, if you put a pickle on or a cucumber on your shelf, it'll last maybe a week, and even day 2 or 3, it's getting a little not as good as it was the first time you picked it. Pickles, though, I mean, you don't need to refrigerate them. You literally have a pickle jar in your pantry for a year. So it extends the shelf life of things, and it's been very conducive to human civilization. It's been great for human beings in order to extend the shelf life of their various foods and also change those nutrients, because the bacteria, as a byproduct, they often create other compounds that can be good for us. So that's what fermentation is. It's when a monocellular organism alters the chemical makeup of a substance. And in the case of human beings, we deliberately do that to improve on things that we already have. So, hope that answers it. Let's see. On the podcast, you mentioned you're a metal fan. What's your favorite metal band? Oh, that's a hard one. Well, hands down, my favorite band, period, happens to fall in the genre, and that's Black Sabbath. Big Ozzy fan, big Black Sabbath fan. That being said, a lot of times if you talk about metal to more modern audience, stuff from the 70s and 80s is kind of like not in vogue. They tend to think of it more as like hard rock, which I disagree with, but I'm not going to go on a tangent about it. So if we're talking like classic metal, Black Sabbath, Blue Oyster Cult, Ozzy, I like Led Zeppelin, even though I kind of don't consider them to be metal. Let's see, AC/DC's pretty good, and stuff like that, but Black Sabbath in particular. And then with the more modern, heavier stuff, I really like Cradle of Filth, Behemoth, Necrophagist, Gorgoroth, Cannibal Corpse is okay, Monster Magnet's okay. Can't think of anybody else right now, but I mean, there's plenty. I'm a big fan of the genre. Oh, Judas Priest, yeah, that's more classic, not modern. But yeah, so big metal fan, like a lot of different kinds. I mean, I have a very eclectic taste in music in general, and in metal, it's no exception. Like I like a wide variety. I like the old stuff. I like the new stuff. I like the heavy stuff. I like the soft stuff. Let's see. Next question. Ooh, this one's gonna be long, probably. I feel like this is gonna be a long video. Why do birds sing? Ooh. Okay. In one of my videos, I talk about the difference between the sexes, and one of the things I mention is that there's intersexual competition, which is very rare. It's what created the sexes, though. And then there's intrasexual competition, which is much more common, and that's when you see females compete with females for males, or vice versa, males compete with males for females, and the latter is much, much, much more common. And the reason for that is because women, or females rather, are sort of investor organisms. So they have bigger gametes, they carry their offspring, not necessarily to term the way all mammals do, but it takes a lot more in terms of calories and resources and energy and time to produce offspring than what the male is going through, where they're just producing very, very easy to make gametes in the form of sperm, and they could literally impregnate tens, if not hundreds of thousands of females in the same time frame that it would take for a female to have one or one litter, depending on the species, of offspring. So huge, huge difference in that sense. And as a result, males tend to be more competitive with one another. That's how they showed their value. So females are more coveted during like whatever breeding season that animal has, and then the males are competing with one another in order to get a particular female, or sometimes just any female. And that's the biggest reason why males sing. And you see intrasexual competition is probably the most extreme in birds. Like, you don't see it nearly as much to that degree in mammals and in reptiles and really any other animal. I mean, you see it, but it's just, in birds it's very obvious. A great example would be the sexual dimorphism of most birds. Well, not most, but birds in general. Cardinals, bluebirds, the list goes on. There are physical differences between the males and females in birds, and the males are always more striking and more colorful. The females are often sort of a drab brown color. That's a form of intrasexual competition among the males. The brightest male, the male with the nicest plumage, is more inclined to get a female because they are indicating to females that they are healthy, they're virile, they're at a good age to reproduce, etc. Right? Well, songs do something similar. Songs require memory. They require endurance, because it actually does take a lot of effort to do those songs. And also, you have to, for most songbirds, you have to maintain territory to sing within that territory, or you'll get run off by whatever male has claim to it. So when a male bird is singing, what he's really doing, and this is why you hear bird songs in like late winter to early summer, like late summer and autumn, you don't really hear as many birds, and that's because it's not their breeding season. And that's really why these males are singing. They're showing several things. They're showing, look, I'm young or I'm old, depending on the circumstances, because living a long time is also a good indication. That you see this especially with birds who add and change their song as years goes by, as they improve their singing ability. That's, it's kind of like when you see human men who acquire more resources over time, and women are more inclined to be attracted to them over, say, a younger bachelor, etc. You get the idea. They're showing value. So they're showing that they have territory. They're showing that they have resources to raise young. They're showing that they're healthy. They're showing that they're virile. They're showing positive traits that they have that would be attractive to female birds. That's why birds sing for the most part. Now there's a few exceptions. Sometimes the females also sing. And usually that's not intersexual competition between females. Usually what's happening are a couple of things. One, the courtship rituals of some birds require a song, a duet. And as a result, what that does is it reinforces the bond that couple of birds already have, and also it makes sure there's no errors, because if there's one thing nature doesn't like, it's hybrids. Nature likes diversity, but it doesn't like hybrids. So this sort of prevents any mix-ups between physically very, very, very similar bird species, because that ritual is going to be something that's adapted past the point that those physical differences have. So it's going to prevent hybridization, it's going to encourage genetic diversity within a group of birds, and also it actually reinforces, like I said, the emotional bonds between those birds, because just like with us, just like with human attraction, bird couples, it's based on oxytocin. It's based on the same chemical compounds that we feel, that make us experience affection. So singing together and having that kind of back and forth, it's actually good for them. And another reason why every now and again you'll have birds sing for non-attracting a mate kind of thing is birds do sometimes use songs to communicate other things. So sometimes, like case in point, you'll see a bird couple or whatever. I don't know what the proper term is for that. What do you call a male and female bird who are in like a quasi-monogamous relationship? Anyway, you'll see two of them sometimes, and there'll be different songs that they'll sing to one another at different times if you observe them long enough. Sometimes it's because it's a form of communication. Like, let's say the male is watching the little hatchlings, the baby birds, and it's time for her to take her shift over, because a lot of times male and female birds will share the parental duties. He might have a song expressly for that, expressly for, hey, I'm going to go take a break now. That's a real thing that birds do. It's very interesting. Yeah, I think that covers it. But the main thing is birds sing as a form of, male birds in particular, as a form of competition to show that they're healthy and virile, etc., that they're what a female bird is looking for. So, yeah. Hope that answers everybody's questions. Like, share, subscribe, and keep asking questions. Bye.